We're going to welcome in Evan Washburn to the show, CBS Sports, NFL, of course, a very talented crew with Ian Eagle and Charles Davis, or as Amal and Dustin said, the nicest crew in sports. We say hi to Evan, at Evan Washburn on Twitter. It's true. It is true. Hey, I want to give you credit here. The post game with Joe Flacco. I've never seen anybody get any emotion out of Joe Flacco. I'm sure you've heard of a lot of good notes on that. Give us a little taste. You were there for Jags at the Browns. Flacco's going to be the starter moving forward for the Browns, and he actually gave you something. He's generally pretty stoic.
Yeah, well, look, I appreciate the kind words about the crew, first of all, and full transparency here, I go back with Joe. I mean, he was in Baltimore for 11 years. I live in Baltimore. I started in local TV covering the Ravens. We actually were at Delaware at the same time. We didn't hang out socially, but we have that connection. So I've seen Joe's NFL journey, and that's what made Sunday so cool, and really this story so fun to watch moving forward is I've never seen him that joyful in-game, not just post-game, but in-game, and sort of appreciating the moment. And that was the thing he said to me and to us in the days leading up to that game, and obviously post-game on the air. And it's funny. I mean, the guy's won a Super Bowl. He's a Super Bowl MVP, and he enjoyed himself in Baltimore in his first 15 years in the league. But it's clear he's really soaking in these final, however long it's going to go here, last few opportunities, and he should.
Evan, to kind of follow up on that point, Stefanski's similar in age to him. This Browns team, despite their injuries, seems to have a closeness, I've been told, that just maybe doesn't exist among some of the previous Browns teams. Is that something you were able to notice when you were there in Cleveland last week?
You're 100% right. I think last year and the last few years, and even before Stefanski was there, they've had talent. That hasn't been the issue. They've just been fractured at times and disconnected, and I think Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry and that staff really made it a priority to build a bond before the season, and that's why they went away to the Greenbrier. Remember, they had the extra week because of the Hall of Fame game. They did a week out in L.A. Now, they lost both games, but they've really made it a priority to create that culture and that bond, and the proof is in the fact that they've been able to sustain the season despite just being ravaged, not just the Sean situation, but, I mean, you go through it. Brant Delpit's now out for the season with the groin injury. Both sides of the ball hit so hard, and they're right in the thick of it. And it has me thinking Kevin Stefanski deserves some real consideration for Coach of the Year.
Totally agree. Evan Washburn, CBS Sports. They've got the 49ers Cardinals called this weekend. Looking forward to it. Jags Browns this past week. Week 13, Evan, you had the Broncos and Texans. I'd love a takeaway from both. You know, Sean Payton, early losses, but professional coach, that team starting to build, and also a young Texans team. What'd you take away from the Broncos and Texans?
Let's start with Denver. I think that Sean, it took a while, at least in the season, for his impact to be felt, but you can feel it, not just with the players, but the support staff, that entire organization. They've been all about business this year and turning this thing around. They're saying less and doing more, and they're allowing their act to pay dividends, maybe not this year, but over the course of the next few seasons. The major question is obviously surrounding Russell Wilson, and I would say, talking to Russ, but probably more importantly talking to Sean, that they have a connection and a relationship that's growing, and one that I think can be sustainable for a couple seasons here as they work through that massive contract that sits there with Russell Wilson. And whether he's going to end up going back to what he was at the peak of his career, that feels a little far-fetched, but I think he's playing at a level that is good enough for this team to win games. And as Sean and that group continue to build around him and the mold that they see, I think that the Broncos are heading in the right direction. Conversely, the Houston Texans, to me, are arguably the most entertaining team outside of San Francisco in the league. At least they play entertaining games. I mean, they seem to come down to the wire, and C.J. Stroud, which is a bummer to see him get banged up last week with the concussion, but man, he just delivers. And I think they're in such a good place moving forward. I felt like it might be this year, but maybe the injuries might be a bit too much here down the stretch. But There's no better player in year one or year two moving forward to bet on than C.J. Stroud.
Evan, take us through a little bit about, I've seen some interviews you've had with him. You seem to have a pretty good rapport with him. Tell us just a little bit about his personality and what's allowed him to step in and be so effective as a rookie. And then D'Amico Ryans as well. Don't hear a ton about him, but his leadership seems to have had a profound impact on this team quickly.
It's that great example, we'll start with D'Amico, of ex-player that went into coaching, fell in love with the coaching and the leadership side, but hasn't lost that player dynamic. And he's able to connect with guys. He's still on the younger side. He looks great. Looks like he could still play. And I think he brings that to the practice field, to the meeting room, that energy. And he has a ton of credibility because of that, especially in Houston. But he also has the taskmaster in him and the schematic backing of a guy who built the defense in San Francisco or was part of a culture defensively there in San Francisco that's been so effective the last few years. And on the flip side, C.J. Stroud there's the physical gifts and the ability that he has at quarterback, but I've been more struck by a guy who just seems so poised and wise beyond his years, but it's always that key aspect of authenticity. It's genuine. He didn't watch Tom Brady on YouTube and watch his press conferences and now copies them. It's him being himself through the prism of what you need to do to be a franchise quarterback and have guys rally around you. When he's talking to the media, when he's talking to us, he's doing it in a way that he's the leader. But when he's in the locker room, he's one of the guys. And you can see that and hear that from his teammates. I mean, they describe him as one of the funniest guys in the locker room. He's buddies with everybody. And that aspect of the quarterback position is grossly underrated. You have to be able to be the alpha, the leader at times, but you also have to be one of the guys a lot of the time so that they feel comfortable around you.
Evan Washburn, CBS Sports, on his way out to San Francisco this weekend with the crew. But you live in Baltimore. I want to ask you specifically, it's a team in the Ravens that are poised to get that 1 seed in the AFC. But tell me what you think the impact of not having Andrews the rest of the year means for Lamar.
It's just a security blanket, a layer that they really have leaned on, obviously, in previous years. And while the numbers up until the injury weren't to that level, which I think is a positive, he was able to, with the added pieces around him and the system that Todd Monken's running, not just constantly lean on Mark at all times, but in the most critical moments, and that's what we're embarking on right now as we head into December in these final 4 games and into the playoffs, those critical moments, everything shrinks. And then that's where you find yourself as a quarterback going to the people that you count on most and trust most. And Mark Andrews, no doubt, was that for Lamar and will be that again. So that aspect is concerning in those big-time spots. But I think situations like last week against L.A. and whatever they experience here in the final 4 games will be really helpful in kind of creating a new comfort in those moments, knowing you're not going to have Mark this season.
Evan, when you're doing your job on the sideline, the game's 10-10, do you just take whichever coach you're just going to go to one sideline that you're on? Or is it predetermined which coach you'll speak to first? And if the game's 21-0, are you always taking the leading side before they go into halftime and then catch the other coach on the way out because he's probably calmer at that point?
I love this. This is like inside baseball, nuts and bolts. The way it often works is home team coach has the preference. So a lot of guys like going in first. And so I'll talk to whoever that home coach is, and his preference is say it's going in. And then hopefully the away coach is amenable to coming out if he's normally a going in kind of guy. And sometimes if they're both locked into one version, then you have to make your decision based off of game situation, those sort of things.
Okay, wonderful. Well, travel safely. Again, Evan Washburn, CBS Sports, with the 49ers and Cardinals coming up this weekend. Thank you, Evan, at Evan Washburn on Twitter. Appreciate you.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.